Goals are important for a genuinely success-oriented person. Without them, you're just playing around. The difference between a goal-directed individual and someone without goals is like a Wimbledon champion and a kid batting a tennis ball around on a court with no net, no opponent to bring out the best in him, and no way of keeping score. Despite everything written about the importance of goal setting, very few people put it into practice. It's always amazed me how the average person devotes more thought and effort to planning his or her 2-week vacation than to planning his or her life. Goals represent a challenge in its most positive form. Leaders have their personal goals, as well as those of their organization, clearly in focus. One of the principal responsibilities of leadership is defining goals for the vast majority of people who aren't able to do it for themselves. Over the years, I've developed some ideas about effective goal setting, and I'd like to share those with you. I also want to point out some traps of goal-directed behavior that aren't usually talked about, but certainly ought to be. When I was a kid, I used to dream what it would be like to buy a ticket on a train and just go someplace. I didn't think about where I'd be going or how long it would take to get there. I just loved the idea of getting on the train and letting it take me somewhere. I guess there's still something appealing about that idea, but it's not the way you should live your life as a mature human being. When you grow up, you buy a ticket on a train or a plane because you want to go someplace and you know exactly where you're going. You might have to change planes in a different city, your flight might be canceled, you might have to switch to another flight, you might not feel like talking to the person seated next to you. But you will persist. You know where you're headed, and you're quite determined to get there. That's goal-directed behavior in its simplest form. There are short-term goals and long-term goals. Sometimes you're flying across the country. Other times you're just walking down to the corner grocery store. Long-term goals are the equivalent of a major journey. When you reach the point where you've achieved your long-term goals, your life will be fundamentally changed, and the process of getting to that point will transform you into a stronger, wiser, and higher performing person. How can you identify your long-term goals? On a sheet of paper or in a notebook, write these 5 questions. 1. What do I want to do? 2. Who do I want to be? 3. What do I want to see? 4. What do I want to have? 5. Where do I want to go? Under each of these categories, write down several possible long-term goals. Be very relaxed about this. Just allow your mind to flow and come up with 3 to 6 ideas for each category. Don't worry about a lot of details at this point, and don't spend too much time describing a particular goal. For example, refer to category 1. Suppose you want to write a book about the history of your family going back to the arrival of your great-grandparents in the US. Just quickly jot down family history. Then it occurs to you that you've always wanted to see the pyramids in Egypt, so you write pyramids. Keep writing down ideas as long as the list of categories continues to inspire you. You'll probably be surprised at some of the things that turn up. You might have kept a great many desires and aspirations hidden in the back of your mind, but the opportunity to write them down will move them to the forefront of your consciousness. That's one of the benefits of this technique. When you're satisfied with your list of long-term goals, read through the list once again. Then beside each item, write the number of years that you believe it will take you to achieve that particular goal. It's best to round off the numbers into 1 year, 3 year, 5 year, and 10-year time frames. For example, you might estimate that it will take you 10 years to research and write a book on your family history, but you'll need only 5 years to reach a position where you can take a trip to the pyramids. Create a time frame like this for every one of your long-term goals. When you're finished entering your time frames, there should be a fairly balanced distribution for all your goals. If there are many 3-year objectives but only a few in the 10-year category, maybe you need to think more about what you want your life to add up to, what kind of life you want to build over the long run. But if there's a preponderance of 10-year goals and relatively few of the shorter-term variety, this might be an indication that you tend to put things off. Keep working on your list, adding and subtracting goals with various time frames until you've created a more or less even distribution. Now comes the challenging and interesting part. So far, you've just been adding things to the list. Now you're going to start asking yourself what's important compared to what might just be fun. Choose 4 goals from each of the 4 time frames: 1 year, 3 year, 5 year, and 10 year. You now have 16 separate goals. So far, you've only referred to them in shorthand fashion. But now you're going to start seeing them very clearly in your mind's eye. You're going to see each goal just as if it were being realized this very minute, and you're going to write down a detailed description of exactly what you see. Do you intend to open a handmade furniture store in 3 years? What will the store look like from the street? Will there be gold leaf lettering on the windows, or will there be a sign hanging over the door instead? How many square feet will the store contain? Will there be a showroom area for the furniture in front and a workspace in the back? Or will the furniture be built at a different location? Do you intend to have any employees? Or will you run the business entirely by yourself? Think of all the questions that need to be answered to see your goal with absolute clarity, and then write the information down. That written record will become one of your most important personal possessions. But that's not all. Any goal is a powerful motivator only if there's a powerful reason behind it. Why do you want to achieve your goals? Why do you want to own a handmade furniture store, a private airplane, or a newspaper in a small town in Vermont? Why do you want to compete in a triathlon, visit the Australian outback, or be the first woman in your family to earn a PhD? Write down your reasons for wanting each goal in the same degree of detail that you used to write your descriptions. If you can't find a clear and convincing reason for each of your 16 goals, do some serious reevaluating. You might have more whims or pipe dreams than real goals, and now is the right time to make that discovery. Keep working on your list until you have 16 envisioned, strongly motivating long-term goals. At regular intervals, review what you've written and keep careful track of your progress toward these objectives. Above all, persevere. Goal setting is a very important first step, but goal achievement is a continuous, lifelong process. That's what makes it so challenging. That's also why it's so extremely rewarding to finally attain your long-term goals. At 25, shortly after meeting my mentor, Earl Schoff, I had a day called Do Not Kid Myself Anymore Day. I didn't want to be disillusioned anymore. I finally decided that the crossed finger theory was not going to get me what I wanted. It wasn't where the treasure lies. I was going to have to make sure which way I was headed. Then, with Mr. Schoff's help, I found a few reading disciplines, a few disciplines of mind, and a few disciplines of activity, when exercised, can make all the difference in the world as to where you will arrive. But it just took a few changes. Sometimes we get the idea that we're doing 10% and there's 90% more that we need to make the difference for our fortune, but probably the opposite is true. We're doing enough things to have bought and shared in the good life. And maybe all we need is that extra 5 or 10% of intellectual change, activity change, refinement of discipline, refinement of thought. All we need is the ideas to make those simple changes, and the equity starts gathering in 1 year, 3 years, 5 years, or 10 years. But now is the time to fix the next 10 years. You may have to come to grips with reality and with truth. That's what was good for me when I met Mr. Schoff. I was 25 years old, he was 44 years old. He brought me a wealth of experience, and he started asking me the tough questions. Big question, he said. Are you reading the books that are going to take you where you want to go in the next 5 years? Excellent question. To get to where you want to be in the next 5 years, you are either reading the right books or you're not. You're either engaged in the disciplines or you're not. But here's what we don't want to engage in: disillusion, hoping without acting, wishing without doing. The key is to look and say, where am I? What could I do to make the changes to ensure that I can take more certain daily steps toward the treasure I want? The mental treasure, the personal treasure, the spiritual treasure, the financial treasure. I don't want to make any more errors. Now's the time to adjust my daily program to take me where I want to go. The key is to start right now making these changes to walk this new road. Just a few daily disciplines make a great deal of difference. And before you know it, you will be walking a brand new road. Life is about constant, predictable patterns of change. And the only constant factor will be our feelings and attitudes toward life. We as human beings have the power of attitude, and that attitude determines choice, and choice determines results. All that we are and all that we can become has indeed been left to us to decide and interpret through our attitude and choices. Life is like the changing seasons. You cannot change the seasons, but you can change yourself. So the first major lesson in life to learn is how to handle the winters. They come regularly right after autumn. Some are long, some are short, some are difficult, some are easy, but they always come right after autumn. That is never going to change. There are all kinds of winters. The winter when you can't figure it out. The winter when everything seems to go awry. There are economic winters, social winters, and personal winters. Wintertime can bring disappointment, and disappointment is common to all of us. So you must learn how to handle the winters. You must learn how to handle difficulty. It always comes after opportunity. That is never going to change. The big question is what to do about winters. You can't get rid of January simply by tearing it off the calendar. But here is what you can do. You can get stronger, you can get wiser, you can get better. Remember that trio of words, stronger, wiser, better. The winters won't change, but you can. Before I understood this, I used to wish for summer when it was winter. When things were difficult, I wished they were easy. I didn't know any better. Then my mentor Earl Schuff gave me the answer from a part of his unique philosophy when he said, "Don't wish it were easier, wish you were better. Don't wish for fewer problems, wish for more skills. Don't wish for less challenge, wish for more wisdom." If you change yourself, you can change your life.